All right, Baruch Hashem, now we're live. Okay, so just mentioning that croutons, according to Rabbi Yashiv suggests that the bracha on salad with hamoitzi croutons should be first hamoitzi and then ha'adama, because he suggests that when the bread is eaten as a tuffle, it should not cover the other foods.
What do you have with those croutons and there's a bunch of croutons on your side?
Make a bracha on both.
Same thing with soup and soup nuts?
Yeah, same with the soup and soup nuts. Mazonis becomes the main thing, but if it's not cooked together and it's not mixed in till it's one, so mazonis is mazonis and adama is adama. That's it. There are some cases when we say you make hashakal before the mazonis, if it's a suffix, maybe the mazonis is the main thing, but I don't think that's the case with croutons. We're going to learn about it when we learn about noodle soup. But remind me to revisit when we learn noodle soup. But I don't think it's a suffix that the croutons are the main thing by that. ודבר זה מוציא פעמים ששמים קרוטונים, פיסות קטנות של לחם קלוי, שפעמים ברכס הממוציא, תוך סלט המרק, וניר לדסק וסמוישה, שמלחם פחס מגזר אספרח אשר מאכולים, מוח גזר כדרך אספרס לברך עליהם. רזך מגדר אינו בברך בכל מקרה. Wow. A machloikis in the opinion of Rabbi Yashiv. Now, Uladas Echad Megdor Lehador, Ein Uvarach B'chol Mikra. In this sefer, Echad Megdor Lehador refers to Rabbi Yashiv. That's his favorite pasuk. When he says Echad Megdor Lehador, that's what he means. So
That's such a not a vague way of saying, meaning that's such a vague way.
No, he writes it in
way of
his,
saying.
I don't know. He writes it in his introduction. I don't know what his cheshbon was. I'm just saying, here it says, in this other sefer, Shari Bracha, Shari HaBracha, it quotes that, and here it quotes different.
To not make a bracha?
Eina mevorach b'chol mikra. Even if,
You're sure he's referring to that?
I'm sure it's referring to Eliashib, yeah.
And then the Dirshu just said to make two brachos.
No, the Dirshut says to make two, and in the Shari HaBracha, which is what the Dirshut's quoting from, he has a whole back and forth, and he stays like he's not sure.
And then that sefer that the Rav just read, of course, I'm saying a third opinion of not to make anything.
Not to make anything.
So it's three different opinions of what Rav says.
Well, the Dirshut isn't really an opinion. He's just not quoting properly. You know what I'm saying? He's
What
not.
does the Dirshu say?
Dirshut is to say two brachas.
Does that?
Yeah.
The Rav says say two brachos.
Yeah.
I would possibly do. What's his name?
חתיך לחם וקטנם, ויקר כמובן סלח ודס הגשם, ששאין המרק נטפול, ואף המרק, כל מה רבה, ולאחם כן יברך על המרק שהכל. Here he says, אולם יש לעין, לכן יש לימר, כן סבר זו, יש לעין, He's noted. In the Shai Bracha, he's noted to that, but he has a few yesh lions. It's not a clear psak.
What's the Shai bracha?
Rabbi Shmuel Yosef Stitzberg. I don't know anything about it, but it looks like a nice sefer. Okay, so we continue and we say.
I think it was a restaurant. We asked for the fries or not fried, whatever they were. For a piece of bread.
Order garlic bread.
Ask for a piece of bread is the easiest. Yeah. I don't have any other answer. Whenever you have a suffix about the Metzias, You have to try to find some way out because
And I would come with an opinion that if you using the bridges to cover other things.
that's true. You should decide that you actually want the bread. At that point, you decide, I like bread, want bread. But what was I saying? One Paragdalit. Yeah, I don't remember what I was going to say. Yeah, Paragdalit. We had already did the first few halachas. I'll just review them quickly because we did them quickly, and that is, we spoke about eating fruit during a meal. If you eat fruit during a meal, whether they're raw or cooked, if you eat them for dessert, there's no question that you say haitz. Doesn't have to be it could be adama, cantaloupe, whatever. Now, the only exception to that would be if you physically eat every single bite of them with bread. If for some reason you don't want to make a bracha on the dessert, you have to eat every single bite with bread. You can't say, I'm going to start with bread and finish with bread, blah, blah, which we're going to talk about that later. But if you're eating it actually as a dessert, the only way to get out of making the bracha is to eat every bite with bread. So, there's a question in the Mishnah Berurah. If you're eating cooked fruit as a dish in the meal, and you're serving it as a side dish, that maybe that should be covered as you're eating it as a meal, as part of the meal, excuse me. On the other hand, because it is usually eaten as a snack, maybe it's not covered. So the Mishnah Berurah and the Alter Rebbe are all mistopic about that. And the Alter Rebbe recommends that you should eat some of it before the meal. Some of that, in other words, you can have a dish of cooked fruit as your side dish. You know that that's your plan. You know that's on your menu. So before you say hamoitzi, you say take a little bit of that, less than a kazayas, obviously. Eat it, have in mind, wash, and then you're covered. If you eat more than a kazayas, you're in trouble because, according to the opinion that it doesn't cover the meal stuff, you have to make a bar nefashos because it's not connected to the meal. So therefore, eat less than kazayas. Same exact situation with karpas and chazeres. So karpas and mar, right? That you eat less than kazayas because if it's not covering the mar during the meal, then you would have to say bar nefashos, it's a doubt, whatever.
So, okay, yeah.
Another example, the Mishnah Berurah says, another way to deal with this side dish is simply to take a fruit that is not raw, that is not cooked, a regular piece of apple, and eat it at that point during the meal. In other words, what makes this different than a regular snack? Because you cooked it in a way that's a dish. Okay, so take something else that's not prepared in that way, that is still considered a snack food. Have some of it, kazayas and no kazayas makes no difference, and then you cover this dish. This same doubt would apply to something like a Waldorf salad, which is basically a salad made with apples and walnuts, named after the Waldorf Astoria. Just made that up. Or maybe named after the same person who the Waldorf Astoria is named after. But anyway, it's named after somebody. And that salad is the same doubt because it's really, you're eating it as a side dish, but apples are normally eaten as a main dish, as a snack. So the same stuff would apply. So if you could have some of it before or something else during.
If you didn't have it, you didn't eat it?
Yeah, just without a bracha. Safek brachas laka.
No, if you're eating that as a regular, not as a dessert. It's one of the sounds.
Without a bracha.
Right, there's a suffix.
There is a suffix, yeah. According to the tzad, that you make a bracha on fruit that is eaten even as a side dish, that's no different.
So what about the fruit that we eat on Rosh Hashanah, like the apple? Should we eat less than the chazayas of that?
No. No need to eat less than the kazayas because you eat it during the meal.
But then why do we say the extra bracha on Break 8 on the apple?
Because it's not a meal food, it's a snack food. Apples are snack foods.
Uh-huh.
You don't make an after bracha because anything eaten during the meal, you don't make an after bracha on it. With very rare exceptions nowadays, basically no exceptions. It used to be there were exceptions. We'll get to them one day, Mitzvah Shem. But nowadays, basically anything eaten during the meal, there's no after bracha. Before I continue, I'll go back to the Rosh Hashanah thing in a minute. But I came across a Meiri, he brings it down, the Dirshu, that the reason you don't make a bracha after is because all the food mixes in your stomach. All the food you eat during the meal mixes in your stomach. And as such, it's all contributing to your satisfaction. So when you say, V'achalta v'savato v'rachta, that's part of that bracha. It's hanoas me'ayim. You thank Hashem that your stomach feels full. So in terms of that, it's covered. Alter Rebbe says the same word, that it's v'achalta v'savato, it's all contributing to the sphere. He just doesn't say the word that it mixes in your stomach. That's a nice addition there. Anyway, in terms of Rosh Hashanah, so you make a bracha ha'etz on the apple. Some say it on the Shivas Haminim, whatever. But in any case, those fruits are not being eaten as a part of a side dish. It's a simon. It's a nice simon for the coming year, but it's not like a side dish. It's not like a course of the meal. I will say that this is a little bit contradicted. Not just contradicted, it's just a little bit of a difference than Moror. Moror, there's a machlokes if Moror is included in the bracha of HaMotzi or not. Like we said before, and last week we mentioned it also, I believe, there's a doubt if Moror is covered by the HaMotzi. If Moror is covered by HaMotzi, then you don't need the karpas to cover it. If Moror is not covered by HaMotzi, you do need the karpas to cover it. Because of that doubt, we eat less than a kazayas of karpas, we have them on the Moror, all kinds of things. Why should HaMotzi not cover the Moror? Why not? I'm not talking about the horseradish, I'm talking about the lettuce. It's a piece of lettuce. When is the last time anybody ever made a bracha on lettuce during the meal? Ready? Besides croutons and salad, according to Rabbi Yashin. More, there's lettuce, yeah? So what? It's what? I'm talking about the horseradish. I'm not talking about the horseradish. I'm talking about.
That's why I made more.
I'm talking about the lettuce.
No.
It doesn't taste bad. It tastes the same as the lettuce in your salad, except that doesn't have dressing. But is it bad begashmias? I mean, you're having it for more. Does that change it begashmias?
First of all, that is why we have more, because it's more.
I understand,
Saying.
but it doesn't change the
It's
taste.
not like a sweet thing that we're going to consider not more.
But it doesn't change the taste.
But it's okay. I get it. Right? Since we never say wrong, so why not? We use the Rav saying because unless in our minds it's something that's something along those lines.
You're starting to say something out there says, but not quite. Anybody else? So the way the Alter Rebbe explains it is exactly the opposite of the Aruch HaShulchan. Very interesting thing. So Alter Rebbe says that perhaps it's not considered dvar hanecholim machmas. And my understanding of that is that the way you eat the lettuce, just a dry piece of lettuce, instead of making this, when you make it as a salad, that is a side dish. When you eat a piece of lettuce on its own, without any condiments or anything, that's an unusual way to eat it. That is like, for example, if you eat crudités, what are they called? Crudités? What are they called? When they go around before the wedding, giving out these little dips. Hors d'oeuvres, but cruditas. Nobody speaks French here.
Yeah.
I think it's called crudita, something like that. There's like these things that you dip, right? You get things to dip into. So, is that a meal food? I'm talking about carrot sticks. Are carrot sticks a meal food? If you eat carrot sticks,
Oh, crudité.
crudité, is that what it is?
Crudité, yeah.
Crudité, thank you.
Yeah. French appetizers,
French
vegetables and dips.
Oh.
Crudité.
There we are.
But everyone uses hors d'oeuvres.
Okay. So those are, if you would ask me, I think they are snack foods. Just slices of cucumbers, peppers, carrots, all those things. If you don't make them into a salad, they're not really eaten as a side dish of the meal, they're more eaten as snacks. And the lettuce is the same thing. Now, what's the tzad to say that it is covered by the meal? Alter Rebbe says, since you have to have it during the meal, because a mitzvah, so it becomes part of the meal. It's the Seder night. You have to have it. So the hamoitzi has to cover it, because that's part of the meal. It's like Kiddush. Kiddush is part of the meal. I mean, you make it before, so you don't say, you have to say Agafen. But I'm saying the after bracha is covered because it's considered part of the meal, because the mitzvah dictates that it's part of the meal. So here too, the mitzvah dictates part of the meal. Aruch HaShulchan says mamash the opposite. He says, since you don't really want it, it's Aruch HaShulchan actually, that I thought you were saying. Since you don't really want it, you're only eating it for the mitzvah, it's not really part of the meal.
I was more saying like the Alter Rebbe that it's not
Okay. So that's an interesting point there. Okay. Question?
Why are those contradictory things? Why are they so opposite?
One says that the fact that it's a mitzvah is a reason for it to be machmas asuda. Other says, that's Alter Rebbe. Aruch HaShulchan says,
was going to be, but since it's a little bit.
no, the son have a meaning. It's machlokes. It's a machlokes, I think, Tosis and Rambam. It's a machlokes Rishonim. If the Mora is covered by Hamotzi or not. So this is to explain the two shittas. Either it's not covered because it's not Torah Machmas HaSoda, or it is covered because the mitzvah component of it brings it into the Soda, makes it part of the Soda. Aruch HaShulchan explains the exact opposite. The opinion that says that it's not part of the meal is because it's only, in quotation marks, a mitzvah. You wouldn't really be eating it otherwise, so it's not part of the meal because you're not eating it in a secondary way to the bread. You have a mitzvah, so you're eating it. So, interesting point. Okay. Now, so that's all when it comes to fruit that you're eating either as a snack or as part of the meal. Now, if you're eating fruit as part of the meal and you don't want to say a bracha on it, there is an opinion that you can start with bread and finish with bread, and then in between eat it without bread, and you're covered. However, because there's a machlokes about that, the Alter Rebbe recommends, and the Mishnah Berurah says the same thing, better to first eat some without bread, make a bracha on it, and then you can do whatever you want with it without bread. Now, there is one case where it is very easy to bring it into the bracha of Hamoitzi, and that is if your only dish of this meal, besides bread, is the fruit, and you're eating it as a accompaniment to the bread. I don't mean you're eating bread, your fill, and then for dessert you're having fruit. No, your fruit is the accompaniment to your bread. Nothing else. That is your accompaniment to the bread. So then, because you're mamish eating it in a very secondary way, so then some say it's for sure secondary, no need to even eat with bread. To be safe, it's better to start eating it with bread, and then whether or not you finish with bread makes a difference. It's covered. Okay, this is what you're up to.
raw fruit or just?
Same. Same. Spread like jelly or compote.
Preserved.
Preserved, yeah, same. Okay, so here's an interesting point. The Dirshu brings that the Chafetz Chaim, towards the end of his life, would not make a bracha on compote. Even though he wrote clearly in the Mishnah Berurah that you say a bracha on compote, towards the end of his life, he stopped making a bracha on compote.
During
Then the meal. And they suggest here the reason that maybe the people became a little bit more wealthy, even back then in Europe, whatever it was, and it became standard. It became standard to eat dessert. Before that, it was optional. At that point, it became standard. So if it's standard, well, it becomes a meal food. That was the swar of the Chafetz Chaim. However, not everybody buys into the whole thing.
that was as far what they see here.
Felt at that time, yeah, exactly. But not everybody buys into the whole thing. The Chazon Ish Paskin's not like that. Shlomo Zalman Paskin's not like that. It's like the Mishnah Berurah is a printed sefer. What he did as a private person, maybe he had his reasons, not clear. They say, even if you have a dessert every single meal, it doesn't change the fact that you also eat fruit the rest of the time, the rest of the day also. You know what I'm saying? The fact that you have it during the meal doesn't change anything because it is a snack food. You always have a snack food during the meal, fine, but it's not that everybody eats it only during the meal. That didn't happen. It's still eaten during the day also. So therefore, it's not considered a meal food per se, even if you eat it every meal. So those achronim say that you do say a bracha on it, and that is the simple halach. Okay. We are up to A. Chol makom she'eina pas, she'eina peres neftarim, beberachas hapas. Any place where the fruit are not covered by the bracha on the bread, you have to make a bracha on them, even if you have them in front of you. And when you said Hamoitzi, you intended to cover them. And every place that they are covered, they're covered even if you didn't have them in front of you, and you didn't mean to include them. Presumably, the intention is on everything that is brought in front of you. Because you set yourself up to eat a kriyastika meal. As we're going to see later, when you start a meal, you have in mind whatever's going to come. That's a normal thing. It's normal that your meal should extend and include other things. Now, if you know for sure that you had no intention to eat this, for example, you started your meal and this thing was simply not in your house, wasn't in your house. In the middle of the meal, your neighbor brought you something over, said that we had some extra soup, whatever it is. Here, please. So you could not have had it in mind. You had no way of knowing it was coming. So therefore, it should not be included, logically. Even though it's something that's eaten as a side dish, right? Under the halachas of ikar and tafel, it should be included. However, we said, when we learned about ikar and tafel last week, that the ikar only covers the tafel if you thought about the tafel when you ate the ikar, when you said the bracha on the ikar, you knew that it was coming. If you didn't know,
this thing that your neighbor brought over, is it a main dish for the meal or is it a dessert?
A main dish for the meal. A dessert, you would have to make your own bracha even if it was in your own kitchen the whole time. It was sitting in front of you the whole time. Wouldn't help. but the main dish, the side dish, all of that is covered. But if he brought it over, logically, it should not be covered because you had no way of having it in mind. And based on the rules of Iker and Tafel, you have to have had it in mind for it to be covered. However, the Alter Rebbe continues, nowadays, people are not careful about this last halacha in our countries. Excuse me. Nowadays, it's a very common thing that people should send each other meal foods from house to house. Raise your hand. When's the last time any of you got? Should send like meal food. Should send gifts of food. Raise your hand. When's the last time you got a gift of food besides Purim? Or your guests who bring, a gift with them. They bring some stuff.
Who's writing this?
When you have a baby.
When you have a baby.
You won't make meals, or when you're sick.
Exactly. But then they don't send you just one thing. They send you a meal. What? Drink Shiva. Yeah. That, yes. But other than that, very rare nowadays. I wonder if the halacha changed. So this is already from the Ramah, actually.
People bring food.
What?
When you move,
in.
In certain places.
Right.
When I grew up in Chicago, that's what people did.
Right.
Bring a casserole or.
Right.
Right now, everyone is such a different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shares food.
That's true. Oh, here we have it, my friends. Ochein, says the Dirshu. Ein din ze noigel b'makoymes behem derech hashchenim le'yakrov neshlocha echol zeh lezeh. This halacha that you can expect your neighbors to send you stuff, therefore it's included, is only true in a place where your neighbors or your relatives who live nearby, obviously, who share with you. I'm coming to in places not like that. I live in Mikra Sholak Achad Hashem V'Amtzasu L'Tav Shel Chaver. It happens that he sent it because of a Shulchan Shezach L'Baruch Allah. Chimur L'Vush Shulchan Aruch HaRav Sif Hey. Vitil David Shekatz Rav Moshe Nir Shem B'chol Even Zal. Okay. He's not sure about it. He says the Tila David says that maybe it covers you anyway, because you have in mind whatever is going to be brought to you. Not specifically from your neighbors, but from the kitchen, and maybe that includes even the neighbors. So in the end, he's not 100% sure, but at least according to Aruch HaShulchan, nowadays you would say a bracha.
What is the deal with drinking fountains? I've seen some people, like, they bring cups to drinking fountains. Does that have to do with this whole idea that the water's not in front of you, after you say the bracha? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I heard from Rabbi Dolphin 3 reasons why not to make a bracha on water in a drinking fountain. One reason, what? Yes, guess, go ahead. No. Maybe in New York City, but I don't know if they have them here.
No, I saw the law that says that at night you can't see the water.
Shaden? Why? It's not a pond, it's a drinking fountain.
Maybe it wouldn't work.
So you check, make sure it's working.
So there's 3 besides everything was.
Besides those, yeah. Oh, that's one thing. He said when they were testing, when Gideon was testing soldiers that he wanted to fight with Moav, Hashem said, there's too many soldiers, we need fewer soldiers. So it should be clear that it's a miracle. You shouldn't think that they won because they're so strong. So he had different ways of eliminating soldiers. One of the ways was when they went out, he said, bring them out to the river to drink. Those that put their heads down to drink, send them home. The ones that lift the water up, those are the ones you keep. So to put your head down to drink is like the way animals drink.
It's not like a soup.
Right. But the tzaddikim would yeah. The kitzah, so that's reason number one. Reason number two?
Suffix and after bracha.
Open space.
Gemara says you shouldn't drink water from two.
What?
Who says I shouldn't drink water from the two people?
Yeah.
Why?
Drinking cars on the rise.
I don't know. I don't remember that. Why? Because you're not supposed to drink in public, like eat in public.
The stomach that's the two people.
Okay.
That's
Learn new things every day. But anyway, so he says two more reasons. First of all, you're supposed to make a bracha what's in front of you. And here the water's not in front of you.
oh, any water that even if you press the button, the water is over there.
Now, the truth is that is discussed in the Gemara. The Gemara says, how do you make a bracha on water in a stream? It's not the same water. And the Gemara says, because you know it's going to come, so it's considered good enough. But that's like a b'diavad. Not like lechatchila. That's his own.
Well, I know the
bracha.
water's coming anyways in the drinking fountain.
Same thing, but it's only he's saying that the Gemara says that like you have no choice. What are you going to do? But here he says take a cup and put it into the cup, and that way you don't have to rely on that. And thirdly, he says you're supposed to lechatchila hold in your right hand whatever you're making a bracha on. Can't do that. So he suggests to take a cup. Anyway, but strictly speaking, you're allowed to do it. But Lamaisa, how do we get onto that?
No, I asked because I thought if something wasn't in front of you, there was an issue with saying the bracha on it.
Oh no, the fact that you know it's coming, the Gemara says that's good enough for a river. So you can do it for a drinking fountain. Okay.
So it's more like if you're a Baal Nefesh or a Midas Chasidus that you
Exactly. Mikra then there's no problem. Said that already. Number Zayin. Here's a chiddush, my friends. Water and other drinks you don't make a bracha on during the meal. Why is it a chiddush? Because you would think water is a classic example of something that you drink during the day. It's not a meal food. You drink whenever you're thirsty. Now, there might be two reasons why you're drinking during the meal. One is to help the food go down, to get some liquid in to help you digest. So that's at least somewhat nominally connected to the meal. Even though we said digestion isn't really connected to the meal. But at least there's an argument that can be made. But even if you're not doing it for that reason, you're doing it simply because you're thirsty. Because you can't eat without drinking. You can't eat without drinking. I mean, you can, but it's not normal. It's only normal to eat and drink together. So the drinking is considered part of the meal. Even if you were thirsty before the meal, and you delayed drinking the water till the meal because for some reason it was considered not healthy to drink water outside of a meal in those days. So they would wait until the meal to drink the water. Nevertheless, the fact is, it is still somewhat connected to the meal because you're only drinking it during the meal because the meal is what makes it more healthy to drink the water. So it still has a connection to the meal. In the Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe adds another word. He says that even the drinks that you drink during the day are connected to the meal in a distant way, because it's the food that makes you thirsty. So maybe you didn't drink right away, you drank it later on, but it's still connected to the meal. So if you're thirsty from before, that's also a meal thirst. So there's still a connection to the meal. Which is barbaric. Now, what about drinks that you're not drinking for thirst? Nor are you drinking it for digestion. You go in shecho made vash. For example, beer and mead, which was honey wine. You should not make a bracha on them during the meal. Sorry about the noises, guys. There's some kind of security training going on next door. The point is that the fact is that people don't, at least in those days, hopefully not nowadays either, people don't just drink beer or wine during the day. It's not a normal thing. It's a thing you do during the meal. Now, you're not drinking it as secondary to the bread. You're drinking it because you enjoy it, but it's still a meal food. Because it's something people do during the meal. Now, wine is different, as he's going to say in the next halacha. That's another thing. Therefore, if they were brought during the meal, they are secondary to the meal. Here's another chiddush. You have a l'chaim, and then you have a chaser of the l'chaim, and the chaser is not a meal food. It's a sweet thing, which you would normally say a bracha on during the meal because it's not a meal food. No, here you're having it as secondary to the drink. The drink is tuffle to the bread because it's associated with the meal, and therefore the chaser is also associated with the bread.
You say a bracha.
During a meal? What do you mean?
No, how you're saying is if you say a and after wash, saying that on bread.
That's what we're discussing now. That's what we're discussing now. Oh, we discuss it in 10, sorry. We discuss it in 10. We discuss l'chaim in 10. Ava yayin, but wine. Ava bisha b'lashtoisim sechasuda. Even though you're coming to drink it during the meal, you make a bracha on it. Even though you're drinking it in order to help you digest. Because it's important, and you make Kiddush and Havdalah on it, they establish that it gets a bracha even during the meal. But you don't make a bracha afterwards. Because it's covered by benching. So if you drink it before the meal, even before you sat down for the meal, you don't have to make a bracha on the wine during the Suda. Unless you had no intention of drinking wine during the meal, and then you change your mind. Okay, listen carefully. The wine that you drink before the meal, when you already sit down for that meal, is covered because it's considered to be an appetizer. But let's talk about the wine that you drank before even sitting down. You knew you were going to have the meal soon, but you just want a glass of wine. You came home from work, you're a bit stressed, take a glass of wine. And you know I'm going to start eating the meal soon. And you usually have wine during the meal. So listen carefully. The bracha on the wine before the meal is going to cover the bracha, going to cover the wine during the meal. And because of this, it's going to be covered by benching. This is something we mentioned in the past. It's the concept of a link. When something before the meal covers the bracha of something during the meal, so then the benching, because it covers the thing during the meal, also covers the thing before the meal, because it's connected through the thing during the meal. Got it? So that's what it is here. The wine that you drink before you even sit down is normally not part of the meal. But if it covers the wine during the meal, because you knew you were going to have it, so then it's going to cover the wine. It's going to be covered by the benching also. Ahmed Ramamor says Alter Ben 9. When do we say this? שיעצם מקום בינתיים צריך לעשות לבורך. גם כן שעשה כשיר רביעס. שתון ברכה אחרינו. ויש בכל זמן שדבר חיי השם, שאין שינוי מקום חושב הפסק, כמו שדבר בפרק טס. דבר מור בסתם, וידע את הפרש לתריים שצריך לעשות להפעיל לסדר בחדר האחר, אין צריך לעשות לברך אומר שני אחד בבית אחד. Okay, this halacha is a little bit of a segue from the halachas of Ikar and Tafel to the idea of hefsek and brachos, which we're going to learn about in Paraktes. And that is as follows. When you change location, then unless it's a bracha that has a long, unless the food that has a long after bracha, change of location necessitates a new bracha rishon. I mentioned this in the past. Now, wine has a medium-sized after bracha. Not the whole benching, but not burn nefashos. That is the subject of a dispute we're going to learn about later. If wine is considered something that you have to make the bracha in the same place or not. In other words, if you drink wine, do you have to make the bracha there before you leave? Or you go out and make the bracha in somewhere else? That's a machlokes. If you say you have to say the bracha in the same place, then it becomes a bracha that is connected to that place. So even if you leave the place because you're really supposed to come back, so the bracha goes with you to the new location. So you don't have to make a bracha rishon. So coming back to our case, when you had wine before the meal, and you wanted to cover the wine during the meal, if you had a revius, then it's going to cover it, even if you change location. Because the change of location is not enough to necessitate a new bracha, according to that opinion. And some brachas lahakal, so we pass it like that. Again, if you change location after drinking a revius of wine, you don't have to make another bracha on the wine. Same with mazomas, same with ha'etz for the fruits of Eretz Yisrael. So, in light of that, you would not have to make another bracha even if you changed. In other words, before the meal, you had wine in one room. Then you went to another room. If you had less than a revius of wine in the first room, so then you're going to have to make a bracha on the wine in the meal, which is in the second room, because you had less than a revius. So you're not connected to the first drinking by the bracha achrona, because there is no bracha achrona on that. Now, if you'd be in the same room, it would make no difference, because the bracha achrona carries over whether or not you have to make a bracha achrona. But because you change locations, so you're not connected to that bracha achrona anymore, you're not going to make a new bracha achrona on the wine or in the meal. However, it's what? Yeah. What can I say? I wish. Can you please?
Yeah, they are leaving, I think, in a couple of days, so this should probably be the last time.
Last time it is. Chaparain. You diving in? I didn't.
You need 3, right?
You didn't.
I probably will be here.
And we need 3, but I'll text Elchanan. So it could be 2, could be 3.
Okay, I'll text the group. I'll text the group family.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
It's fine.
Might be able to get some of these guys, these safety people. Okay. Where did you see my false thing on the chat? I'll tell them. Okay. So now if you make a bracha in one room of the same house, and you're planning to go to another room in the same house, then you don't have to make another bracha. Because since you're under the same roof, and you had in mind that you're changing rooms, so it carries over.
If you don't have a mind?
No good. Unless it's a room that you usually go to during the meal. So then it's like you had in mind. But if you decide to go to the garage because you need a screwdriver, if you didn't have in mind, it's a problem. It's a problem. But again, this is all only if it's a meal that's shahakal or eitz or whatever. But if it's once it's a long after bracha, then you're connected to the after bracha if you had a kazayas already.
So is that considered an interruption? Even if is that considered an interruption even if you go out and come back?
Yes. Yeah. Even if you got to come back. Yeah.
So you have to bench before you go out and make another bracha when you come back. Or bench say bring the Birchos.
You don't have to bench, no. You just make it. You don't have to bench before you leave. You just make a bracha Hashem when you come back and say one burn of fushes after for everything.
Oh, okay.
There is no obligation to make a burn of fushes just because you know you're going to make another shakal. Because you know you're not finished eating. You just know that the bracha Hashem is going to expire and you go to a different room. So you make a bracha Hashem, but the same bracha Achrona still covers you for both.
Does that issue also apply when you have mazonos or wine?
So mazonos and wine, as well as the species of Eretz Yisrael, is machloikis. It's a machloikis because it has a medium-sized after bracha. Not quite as important as benching, but more important than burn nefashos. Some say that it's the same as benching, and you have to go back to the place where you made it, and therefore you're connected to that place, and therefore if you change locations, you don't have to make another bracha. Some say no, not. You're not connected. You have to make another bracha. So lemaisa, because of the doubt, it's better not to put yourself in that position. And this would be a case actually where you should do what you've said. If you're eating a mazonos meal and you need to leave, come back and you want to eat more, make a bracha before you leave. Because some say you're supposed to make a bracha in the same location. When you come back, make another bracha. Because, now that you made al mechia for sure. But even if you wouldn't have made an al mechia, some say you would have had to. Some say you don't have to say al mechia in the same location. So changing locations presents a hefsek. So the Maisa, if you left and come back without saying al mechia, now that you're back, you cannot say mezainis. Because maybe it is covered still, like bread. But because of the doubt, it's better if you would have said al mechia before you left and gotten out of the problem.
You go to the bathroom in the middle.
I have two reasons to say that you shouldn't have to make another bracha. One is that that's a normal thing. It's a normal thing to go to the bathroom, so it's considered like you had it in mind. Another thing is that I'm pretty sure there's a Mishnah Berurah that says that if you go somewhere for the meal itself, to help you with the meal itself, it's not a hefsek. So halachically, you're not supposed to eat when you go to the bathroom. So you going to the bathroom can be considered like it's for the sake of the meal. You know what I'm saying? To be able to eat more, halachically, you're supposed to go to the bathroom if you feel like you need to. So therefore, it's considered like a necessary interruption, which is not an interruption. I have that in my head from the Mishnah Berurah, and I hope to find it before we get the Perek test, because it's a very practical thing. For example, you're eating in the sukkah, on sukkahs. Sukkahs is in the backyard, in the front yard, but it's not contiguous to the house. But it's not. I'm talking about if it's not. I know it could be. I'm talking about if it's not. So you have to walk under the open sky to your sukkah in your house. So you made kiddush. You have to go inside, to come back outside and have challah. Why is that not a hefsek when you walk from the sukkah through the yard into your house? Those are two separate buildings, not even on the same roof. To wash, yeah. The same roof. Having in mind only helps under the same roof. Once you're under the same roof, having in mind doesn't even help. So of course it's like you had in mind. You have to wash. But if it's not on the same roof, without having, even having in mind doesn't help. So I remember learning many years ago, Mishnah Berurah holds that because it's a necessary thing, you have to go in to wash. If there's a washing basin outside, it's better, but you don't have one. So you have to go in to wash. So that's not a hefsek. So I think a similar svara could be applied to
What do we teach and do that?
same thing. There you also have both arguments. It's an expected thing, and it's a necessary thing for the meal. So it would seem. Okay.
And also, outside, not just sukkahs, big tents.
Right, exactly.
All are-
Not the oil, yeah, exactly. Same exact question. Same exact question.
Sederim,
Same question.
Why not just make the washing, like you said, make a washing station right there? Okay.
Ask the organizers of the big events. Yeah. I don't think I was happy with the Mishnah Berurah's chiddush on that. I think he wants people to figure out how not to do that thing, going out and coming in. I don't remember. Okay. Yud. Yain Soraf Shabasech Hasuda. Yain Soraf is another way our computer students are dropping like flies. Aria left, David, Chaim Aaron. All right, it is what it is. Yain Soraf Shabasech Hasuda. Mashke, that you drink during the meal. Yain Soraf is another way of saying hard drinks. If you're drinking it for the sake of getting your appetite going, then it's tougher to the meal. You don't make a bracha afterwards. Basically, an appetizer is something we don't make a bracha on. Right? If you have an appetizer in the beginning of the meal, talking about after Hamoitzi already. After Hamoitzi. An appetizer before Hamoitzi will need a bracha or shoina, because whenever you eat the tafel before the ikar, it needs a bracha. You can't cover it with the ikar of something you haven't made yet. It will not need a bracha achroina. Even an appetizer before the meal will not need a bracha achroina because it won't need, the benching will include it because it helped you eat. But here, we're talking about the bracha Rishona, having it after Hamoitzi. And he's saying because you're eating it for the sake of an appetizer, it's considered part of the meal. Now, if you're drinking it in order to help you digest, that's not going to exempt you from your bracha. Because we said foods that you have as an appetizer are covered by Hamoitzi. Foods that you have to aid digestion, which is to say after you already ate, that's a weaker link to the meal. And for that, you have to make a bracha. So if that's your intention, when you drink it, logically, you should have to make a bracha. Unless, of course, you've made a bracha on these drinks before the meal. When do we say this? Only in countries where they don't drink usually during the meal. Rather, they usually drink during the rest of the day to strengthen the heart. So therefore, it's not considered a meal food. However, in these countries, where it's usual to drink it during the meal, you don't have to make a bracha on it. So it's very much a situational thing. In countries where they say l'chaim stam during the day, it should not be covered unless it's an appetizer. But in countries where these drinks are generally had during a meal, then it's considered a meal food.
So for many it's very common that you drink a coffee. It's like part of the
Right. So that would be covered, just like we said before by the beer and the honey one, that even though it's not for satisfaction or for digestion, but it's a normal meal, it's a normal part of the meal.
what about it is
How much more so? How much more so? It's a normal thing to have after the meal, plus it's helping you digest. How much more so? So nowadays, sometimes, people do have drinks during the day. So you could argue and say, well, maybe it shouldn't be covered by Hamoitzi. Because people say l'chaim sometimes during the day. me see if we discussed it here. Just give me a second. Okay. Here's the Birchos Brachos psak. Ready? Birchos Brachos paskins. If you have it during the meal or before the meal, I'm saying in the beginning of the meal or during the meal, it's covered. Why? Because after all, it does get your appetite going. If, however, you have it at the end of the meal, and you only just want to help yourself adjust, or you stop saying l'chaim, end of the meal, then you can't say it's an appetizer because you're not eating anything else. Then you have to make a bracha. It's good to know. If you're having between the fish and the meat, which is a thing that some people do, this l'chaim between the fish and the meat, that's considered soyer chasud, it's considered part of the meal. So that's also for sure not necessary to make a bracha in that case. Me. I think so, yeah. Pretty sure it's in here. All of the drinks that you drink before the meal does not cover. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. There is an opinion that the Alter Rebbe does not bring down here, but he does bring down the Shulchan Aruch, which says you must make a bracha on drinks during the meal. That opinion comes from the Rishonim, says that, listen, you drink during the day also. Drinking is not a meal thing. He rejects that whole argument that it has to do with the thirst, it comes from food, and that. Drinks are not a meal thing, and you have to make a bracha on them during the meal. However, the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, that's not the main halacha. A person who wants to be strict will take some drink before the meal starts, say shahakal, not have a kazayas. Revius. Not have a revius, and then be covered by that bracha when they drink more during the meal. Another way is to have a little bit of shahakal dessert during the meal. Now, have them on that shahakal covers you for drinks. Anyway, the Alter Rebbe doesn't bring it down in the Seder. Obviously, he doesn't hold that it's a necessary chumrah for the average person. For it's his opinion, the person wants to do that, Bagash b'vakasha, Kadeshi Amar Lai, we'll call him holy. But the Alter Rebbe didn't feel it was necessary to share that opinion with most people. Okay.
Could we consider bracha that's not needed?
On water, yes. If you're not thirsty, you cannot make a bracha on water. But on other drinks, no. If you make a bracha on something, even though you're making a bracha in order to cover something else, or to cover the same thing later on during the meal. Fact is, you're enjoying it. Talking about something with flavor, not water. So you make a bracha on that enjoyment, even though the reason you're enjoying it is for a side reason, but you are enjoying it. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing as a medicine. You don't make a bracha on a medicine that's bitter because there's no pleasure. But if you have a good tasting medicine, you make a bracha. I am not eating it for pleasure, not eating it for sustenance. I'm eating it for whatever reason, medical reason. The fact is, you're enjoying it. You have to make a bracha.
So you're saying the bracha on the medicine or on the flavor? Or does it really matter? It's one and the same.
Same.
If the medicine were unflavored, you wouldn't say bracha.
Correct. I have a proof to what I'm saying. You already have a proof to what I'm saying. The Magen Avraham says, if you're only having bread in order to cover the other foods, maybe it doesn't cover other foods. Maybe yeah, maybe no, he's not sure. But he doesn't say the bracha on the bread is levatala. According to you, what are you making a bracha on the bread for? You don't even want the bread. You're only having it because you're not sure what bracha to make of something else. That doesn't bother the Magen Avraham. The bracha on the bread is okay. He's just not sure because you're not eating it as a meal food. Maybe it doesn't cover. Okay, that's the problem. But the bracha on the bread, the fact is you ate the bread. Say a bracha. Okay. Okay, based on what we said before, that anything eaten before the meal is not covered by benching unless there's a link to the meal. If you were drinking before the meal, then you started the meal, and you also drank during the meal, and then you benched. Benching is not going to cover the drinks that you had before the meal. Why? Because there's no link between them and the benching. They did not cover the drinks during the meal because those drinks during the meal were covered by Hamotzi. Not like that singular opinion you mentioned just before. Like the main halacha. The main halacha is the drinks during the meal are covered by Hamotzi. So therefore the drinks before the meal in no way contributed to that bracha. So therefore they're not linked to the Birchos Hamazon, and you have to make a bracha before you start eating. It's a very practical thing. You're at a bar mitzvah, wedding, and all these places, eating, drinking. Okay, so you have to make a bracha acharna. Eating, like we said before, but drinking also, because it's not connected to the meal in any way.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, and that's what's why. Except for wine, because it comes to open your appetite, to draw a person towards eating. It's included in the meal, and therefore it's covered by benching. Or because the wine before the meal perhaps covers the wine during the meal, makes that link. But even if not, even if you have no wine during the meal, wine for the meal gets your appetite flowing. If you're going to have to make a bracha afterwards. For the meal, even if he has no intention to drink the wine during the meal. So if the same thing applies to mashka. Mashka also gets the appetite going. Therefore, if you have it with that intention, we're not saying stop, but if you have it with that intention, so then it is covered by benching, even if you had it before the meal.
So you sit at the table with a bottle of ginger before the meal. You say, when you say the bracha on the ginger ale, you say, you have in mind that you're going to drink it during the so it will cover.
No. Why not?
If you have it in mind, it's the same drink, they're continuing drinking later.
No, doesn't help. Why not?
To wash it, is so,
The difference is, once you washed, the hamoitzi covers all the drinks of the meal. So that bracha that you had from before is not a necessary bracha as far as the meal drinks are concerned. You don't need that bracha. So the meal takes over for that bracha, and that bracha before is not connected to the meal now, because you didn't need it.
I'm sitting on the same table, I'm gonna have to drinking the same drink, and I'm drinking it before, I'm gonna drink it after, and it's like a somewhat continuation.
No, it's not a continuation. The drinks you drink during the meal are part of the meal, and the drinks you drink before the meal are not part of the meal. The same thing applies to foods. Same exact thing. The bracha that you said on anything before the meal is covering the foods before the meal. Once you have those same foods during the meal, if they're meal foods, I'm not talking about snack foods. Before the chasana, you had hors d'oeuvres. Hors d'oeuvres might be filling foods, no French fries, no chicken, little pieces of meat, sechakal. When you come to eat the chicken during the meal, is that covered by that? No way. It's a meal.
So you're looking, so the appetizer to help you open your appetite.
If it would be an appetizer, yes. But I don't know if that's the fact. You know what I'm saying? There are some things that are appetizers. Let's say grapefruit. I don't know about pineapple. I don't know.
Some people have a drink before.
A drink, exactly. Drink is an appetizer. But I don't know if all these hors d'oeuvres and cruditas or whatever they're called, I don't know if they're actually
Some people
appetizers.
have drinks and anything else.
I only know about drinks and some fruits. There could be other appetizers. I'm not a big expert. Could be. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Type of kiddush. The regular wine. The wine doesn't cover all the rest of the liquids.
Yud Beis. So too, a person who makes a kiddush on wine. Since kiddush is only in the place of a meal, it's included in the meal. You don't have to make a bracha afterwards. Let's finish. Actually, I don't know if we're going to discuss that question exactly. Let's finish the whole sieve, and then we'll go back to it. But a person makes Havdalah, and he had no intention to drink wine during the meal. So he has to make it after bracha. Because his intention was not to get his appetite going. For the mitzvah. For the shachal, the brachos, even if you forgot and he did not make a bracha before the meal, and he remembered before benching, then he still makes a ala gefen. He wrote, but not afterwards. Because the bracha on benching covers Ra'amid Yemen, which is not break aleph. He has no cup. If you intended to make benching on a cup, so he doesn't have to make a bracha afterwards before the Suda. He's covered by the ala gefen of benching. Okay, let me just explain what he said here and then I'll answer your question. When you make kiddush, then you have your meal and then you bench, even if you had no wine during the meal, benching covers the kiddush wine. Because the kiddush is part of the meal. Because you have to make kiddush to be able to eat the meal. So it's considered part of the meal. And you have to have the meal after kiddush. Now, Havdalah is different. The truth is you have to have Havdalah. You have to make Havdalah before you eat the meal. But you don't have to have the meal after Havdalah. You have a malka whenever. So it's not considered connected to Havdalah. And therefore, if you had in mind that you're covering the wine during the meal and you drink during the meal, then there's a link. Havdalah covers the wine during the meal. Benching covers the wine during the meal. Wine during the meal is connected to Havdalah because you said Hagafen and it covered it, so you're good. Benching covers everything. It's the concept of a link. Understand? Havdalah connected to the meal because it's covering the wine during the meal. Wine during the meal covered by benching, Havdalah covered by benching. But if you have no wine during the meal, the bracha of Havdalah on the bracha on after bracha on the meal, benching does not cover the Havdalah one. You're gonna have to make another bracha, even if you remember right before benching. Make ala gefen and then benching. And if you remember after benching, b'diavad, you don't say another bracha, because benching b'diavad covers ala gefen. But if not, not. In answer to your question, when you made kiddush and you had drinks during the meal, you don't have to make a geffen on them, and you're covered by benching for sure.
Now, the ground mostly covers all the food. That's
All the meal foods, all the meal foods.
That's the difference, right? A graffin will cover the drinks, and cigar will cover all.
All the drinks, all the food, all the meal foods. Yeah.
How would all this apply like in the Seder? The wine, kiddush, and its whole.
Well, the kiddush wine is covered by
First cup.
the first cup. The first cup is covered by the benching because that's kiddush. Second cup, I don't know if it's covered by benching, but it's covered by the ala gefen that you say after the fourth cup. That's what he says here also. If you say Havdalah before and you know you're going to bench on a cup and you're going to say ala gefen on that cup, that ala gefen can go all the way back to Havdalah. That's no problem. So the second and third cup, ala gefen at the end, covers all of those. One more. V'chein misha oichel lifnei asura parparois. So to a person who eats before the meal, appetizers, mina mesika, mina peris, various kinds of sweets or fruits. To open the stomach and get your appetite aroused for eating. Even though you have no appetizers after the meal, there will be no such extras, he translates it as. There will be no such extras to the meal after the meal to be exempted by them. It's still covered. Meaning to say, if you would have that same food at the end of the meal or during the meal, so it's covered, food before covers the food during, it's covered the same way with that link, but you don't have that. Nevertheless, it's still covered by benching because these things are appetizers, so they're covered by benching. If you only eat them for pleasure, that's the question. Are you eating the hors d'oeuvres for appetizers or for pleasure? If you're eating it for pleasure, you have to make a barnafashas, whatever. You have to make a brach afterwards. Not covered by benching. Just like the wine of Havdalah, which like we explained in the first chapter.
So this for to open your appetite, then you don't have.
Exactly. All right, my friends, that pretty much wraps it up for chapter 4.
Wine, I have other drinks, no kiddush. I can get a wrap up of that. You cover the other drinks?
One more time. Wine, what?
Wine, no kiddush, just wine and other drinks. Okay,
For sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
But if I like something that I really enjoyed, I have to do a rack on that because I enjoy to drink that way.
Wine covers everything.
What was the question, Rebbe?
If wine covers other drinks, even if you like the other drinks a lot, what's the difference? Wine, the Torah says wine, the bracha on wine covers other drinks, no matter which one you like more. Could be you like the milkshake more than the wine, but it's a drink. Wine covers it. Okay, my friends, it's been a short learning week, at least a short smicha learning week. Hopefully not a short learning week overall, but we'll continue with Hashem next Monday night.
Thank you, Rebbe.
My pleasure.
Good Shabbos.
You too, thank you.
You're gonna have